This is the Dental Up Podcast, your daily source for insights from dentists and leaders in the industry. Brought to you by Keating Dental Lab, a full-service, award-winning dental lab that is here to add value to your dental practice. With high-quality restorations, friendly, reliable service, the best products and prices, come experience the Keating difference. Visit KeatingDentalLab.com for details.
Good morning, and welcome back to the Dental Lab Podcast. I'm Bob Brandon, your host and the general manager here at Keating Dental Lab. First, I want to pass along some good news. Yesterday, I received an invitation in the mail for Sean's 60th birthday party to coincide with the 20-year anniversary of the company. Now, I wasn't exactly here at the beginning, only the last 18 and a half years, but I remember all the stress and financial risk he personally had to take on in those early days. And the early years were rough. But with Sean's leadership and never say die attitude, Keating has flourished to become one of the most successful US-based dental laboratories today. And I'm proud to be a part of this team and extremely grateful to have such a wonderful mentor as Sean. Thank you for everything that you've given all of us employees, and congrats to you and Shannon on this truly monumental milestone. Now, before moving on to more serious topics, I need to revisit those three modern-day boys. It seems they were known as the Bigelow Boys, and I had no idea why. Well, it turns out they enjoyed ditching class to help one of the teachers with some manual labor. Boys, I applaud your effort, but just remember, you're going to high school now, and if you ditch class, you just may end up doing manual labor for the rest of your life. Go watch Caddyshack and listen to Judge Smale's advice to Danny. Speaking of judges, what a monumental political week we just had. Think about this, the most meaningful gun legislation in 30 years, and the Dobbs v. Jackson's Women's Health Organization ruling both happened in the same week. And both were pro-life decisions, which is great, especially after the 2 years of death and despair we just had. Now, Griff and I are in Dallas right now for the MLS Next playoffs, and whomever decided to stage the end-of-year playoffs in Frisco, Texas, should really have their head examined. Now, I doubt anybody from the MLS is listening, but if you are, go check out the weather for late June in Oceanside, California, or Seattle, or literally anywhere else but Dallas, and get back to me on that. So today, we're going to speak with another key Keating employee, and I know many of you listening will recognize his voice. He's a 30-plus year CDT, and he's going to pass along a couple of pearls to you young dentists. He's a good friend and trusted coworker, and drives over an hour each way to get to work. Please join me in welcoming to the Dental Up Podcast, Jeff Sugimura. Jeff, welcome to the Dental Lab Podcast. Thank you for your time and for sharing your words of wisdom and some of your experiences today with the Dental Lab Podcast community. Thank you.
Absolutely. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, this is going to be great. I've wanted to interview you for a while here, but finally get our chance.
Great.
So tell us, I guess let's just go back to the beginning. How'd you get in the field? When did you start? And what was your first job like?
You know, I was a sophomore in high school, and my brother Jay was he had a job at Riverside Dental Ceramics doing model and die work. And so he got to the point where he needed some help. So I would go in after school and I would pour up models, trim them, pin them, and get them ready for articulation. And I did that for probably about 4 or 5 months. And it was at that point they came to me and said that they needed somebody full time. And unfortunately, because I was in high school, I couldn't take that position.
Yeah, of course.
But they did offer me the position once I graduated. So I took them up on their offer, and it was it's funny because I ran into the manager at Riverside Dental Ceramics at a bank, and asked him. I said, "Hey, Corey, can I have a job?" He said, "Come on in," and the rest you can say is history.
Wow. So
that was 1986.
Oh my gosh, Jeff, that's fantastic. So started as a sophomore in high school, part-time helping your brother. You know, that's how Sean actually started too. Sean's brother was in dental school, and Sean started helping his brother with some lab work too.
That is great. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So
and look at where Sean is now. That's awesome.
No kidding. So you went straight to high school to Riverside Dental Ceramics. How many technicians were at Riverside at that time?
At that time, I believe there were about 20, maybe 25 at the absolute most.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Awesome. And then, so tell us, how your career progressed from there. Did you go back to, a formal program or a school for your CDT, or was it more like on the job training?
It almost all was on the job training. I started doing plaster work. And then about a year or so later, I started to wax and metal finish. And I was doing that for a couple of years when my brother decided to open up his own lab and asked me to come on board to kind of help him with model work and some pickup and deliveries and wax and metal finish. So yeah, that's where the bulk of the learning, I really started learning quite a bit through Jay and through, the on the job stuff. It's about making mistakes, but it's important to learn from those mistakes.
Oh, 100%.
And that's where we went. I mean, it was all done on the job. And, since then I've taken quite a few seminars and webinars, and wherever I can learn something new, I try to do that. And that was part of how I got my CDT was through a lot of seminars that I went to and attended.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the name of the game. And so working in, both small and big labs. So your brother Jay, it was you and Jay and how many others?
It started out Jay and I, and then it progressed to about 6 other people.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so, it never really got really huge, but it was definitely being on your own and not having a lot of secondary help like we do in these larger laboratories. There's so many people here with so much knowledge. It definitely helps us here in these larger laboratories, but there, we were on our own. And so we learned quite a bit through trial and error.
Yeah, man, I was in a small lab right before I joined on with Sean back in, I think it was 2004. And yeah, you're right. You're definitely right about that. It's you're kind of on your own. You're kind of isolated. And when a problem comes up, you gotta think about it and fix it yourself. And here,
exactly.
we're fortunate. How many times a day do you and Jeanette and I and Jay and sometimes Dean, we have those discussions at that desk in the middle of the lab, and we try to brainstorm and figure out the problems collectively. But yeah, in a small lab, you don't have that benefit.
No, and that what you just spoke about, that's every day, and not just once a day, it's several times a day. And it really helps the process that we all are on the same page and that we can get together in those moments and kind of brainstorm on what is the best way to move forward with a case.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you don't really realize, just if you only work in a large lab and you're kind of pigeonholed into one, department or one step, you really fail to grasp the big picture and really understand how many different steps there are goes into making a successful restoration.
Yeah, and I think what's really helped me in those times where I was in a smaller lab setting was you learn so much that now to be able to apply that in a larger lab setting, I can look into a pan, and depending upon what product is being asked for, I can see what's going to work and what's not going to work just by looking at model work and impression and bites and all that. So, I appreciate my time in the smaller laboratories, but, I'll be honest, I do enjoy these big laboratory settings because it gives you an opportunity to see so much more, rather than, a large bridge. We get large bridges every day. And so there's just so much more that these larger labs offer you in terms of just different things to be able to do.
100%. Sean says it all the time is we see more dentistry in a week than most dentists see in an entire year.
Absolutely.
And we can be a resource for not just our customers, but for any dentist out there that, wants to run an idea. Hey guys, do you think this will work? Okay, let's describe the case. Let's sit down and let's see what type of span we have and what's the occlusion like and, what's the patient's history like? Because I loved it working in a small setting. You develop the real critical thinking skills and the decision making. And now here in our large lab, we get to use that skill set and we get to apply it 100 times a day. Exactly.
Yeah. And it definitely makes the day interesting and it moves fast. To be able to work on these types of cases, it's just, it's amazing. I feel blessed to be able to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. As do I. So tell us how long have you been with Keating? And then what I want you to do is kind of walk us through your typical day, what you do in the morning, and then, kind of the tasks that keep you busy all day.
Yeah, so I've been here at Keating. It's coming up on 7 years now,
Oh,
and
awesome.
yeah, which is it's a good stretch, and I've even grown in that time. I've been in the field since 1986, so that's 36 years.
Yeah.
And so 7 years here, and I'm still learning, and that's what I appreciate the most. But a typical day, through the metal department that I watch over, we're moving hundreds of cases. Not only PFMs, but there's Fogo crowns, there's implants, and then there's other departments that depending upon what product the doctor is asking for, whether it involve a partial or doesn't, I assist in those areas as well, including model and die work. So the day is filled with questions, and again, I feel blessed to be able to answer those questions, and I feel blessed that I get to work on cases, because that's really what I enjoy the most. That and just the relationships that I've built with the technicians that answer to me. I got a great team.
You do,
and
100%.
And we work together well, and I appreciate. And again, I can't say it enough. I feel blessed that I got the guys that I have, that I get to work with every day.
Absolutely, your guys are warriors. They'll go to war for you, and I know they love you, and I know they respect you, and I know they trust you to look out for them. And that's why you're the manager, because we trust you to take care of this group. Yeah. So. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. You've got implants, you've got PFM, you've got full gold, you've got the partials and everything. And right. Let's not forget, I mean, the reduction copings to eliminate the undercuts and the path of draw. Right. And that's a big
and clearance issues.
And clearance issues, right? That's a big deal. So that brings us to the problem solving, because one of your greatest skill sets, I believe, is your ability to problem solve. And I want to hear in your own words, what would you like dentists to know most about the problems that you deal with on a daily basis?
It's a myriad of things. And again, that's not to say that all the work that we look at is bad. Most of it is absolutely good.
I agree. Yes.
But the importance of a good impression that doesn't have any distortions and the clearance. I mean, I understand, and I'm sympathetic that every single situation is not ideal. And so as far as the problem solving goes, to be able to look at something and say, you know what, maybe this product would be better with a metal occlusal, or because of the path of insertion, maybe we should place a PD attachment to correct that path of insertion, or maybe a telescopic coping will suffice. I mean, there's so many different ways to attack a situation where, again, it's less than ideal, and to have that opportunity to try to make it a more ideal situation, and especially for the patient to get something that they're going to be able to use, for hopefully for the rest of their life.
Right. Agreed. And I mean, again, it goes back to, look, 90 to 95% of the cases in this laboratory, they go off without a hitch, and we don't have to use, these critical thinking skills and solve the problems. But I think it's important to know that, in this laboratory, one of our hallmarks is really getting on the phone with customers, with dentists, with clients, and problem solving together. And it's the relationship, it's the communication, it's these difficult cases that really, really make or break, not only the lab, but the dentist patient relationship. So
absolutely, I agree 100%.
I'm so fortunate that we have a great set of customers that are willing to pick up the phone and take our call, because they're probably dreading it. They're probably going, "Oh no, it's Keating. What are they going to call about? And what do we have to do here differently?" But I'm always sympathetic, and I know you're sympathetic, because, like you mentioned, not every situation's ideal. But hey, at the end of the day, we all work for the patient.
Yes.
We may not know, Mrs. Jones, but we do have Mrs. Jones' best interests at heart when we pick up the phone and we make that call to the dentist.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's situations where we don't know that there are other things going on behind the scenes, whether the patient has a a medical condition, or, there's other just different things that are going on that will affect the outcome. And so, it's easy for us to look at something and say, well, no, we can only do it this way. But when we get the full story, fortunately, we have the ability to really assess it and then move forward in the best interest of the patient.
Right. Yeah, I was in the training session this morning with, our customer service team. I was relaying a story where we once made a bridge, a maxillary anterior bridge, 6-11 in full gold. And I called the dentist, and the dentist was in New Orleans. And I said, boy, this is going to cost an arm and a leg. Are you sure you want to do this? And the dentist, then proceeded to say, yeah, that's really what my patient wants. And it turned out that the patient was a jazz musician, saxophone player, down on Bourbon Street. He was blind, and the patient didn't care. The patient just wanted something that wasn't going to chip. Porcelain wasn't going to chip or break off when he put his instrument in and out of his mouth, 1,000 times a day when he's working. And I was like, okay, after you explain it to me that way, it makes perfect sense.
Absolutely. There you go.
Yep. So give us an idea on what are some of the major trends that are happening in your department? What's your team focused on, and what are some of the major areas of growth for your team?
And it's across the board with just about everybody, every lab in the industry. The digital workflow it's really taking over. But that being said, we're fortunate here at Keating that we have a large number of technicians that I guess we would consider them old school, that have hand skills, because the digital will take us probably to the end of time here, but we still need that human touch on certain things. And so, but I would say the largest trend is the digital workflow, being able to scan and design our gold crowns and get them either printed or milled. And implants are just, they're taking off like nothing else. And it's great to see that patients are willing to step up, because it's not the cheapest alternative to tooth replacement, but it absolutely is the best. And we just do an enormous amount of implant work here.
So I was with a group of oral surgeons a couple of weeks ago, and they were telling me that, in the early days, the first 6 months, the first, 10, 12 months even of the pandemic, all they were doing was taking out teeth. They were just extracting teeth because the patients, the dentist was closed. Their dentist was closed. So, the toothache would get a little bit worse, and then it would abscess, and then the patient would finally call their dentist, and, the dentist would phone in a prescription for some antibiotics and maybe kill it off. But a lot of these teeth had to be pulled, in 2020 and, 2021, maybe they're going in and they're getting an implant placed, and 2022, here we are restoring them. And yeah, it's been crazy busy, and, you just had to hire another person for your implant team, and it's working out really well.
It absolutely is. Yes. It's made a huge difference.
Yep. So one of the key things that you do every day, and your skill set is just off the charts, and I can't thank you enough for that, but
I appreciate that.
You do something that I was never any good at. And it's making a new crown adapted to an existing RPD, a removable partial denture. And what I want you to explain here, if you can, is what are the clinical steps required before you get the case? So what are the clinical steps required so that you can do your job accurately?
Yeah. So with cases that involve an existing partial, let me start out by saying the absolute best way is that partial in the final impression, left in that impression for us to use until that crown is completely fabricated. That just about eliminates any adjustments that the doctor may have chairside. And again, probably.
So that's an impression of the prep with a partial picked up in place.
That is correct. Yes. And what we found through the years is that a monolithic material, like an impergum, is probably the best way to lock that partial in place during the impression process. And knowing that the partial is fully seated is equally important. But as we all know, things happen, and patients are really picky, and I feel for them. I'm very sympathetic to it. They don't want to be without their appliance. And so probably the next best way is an adaptation pattern. And what the doctor would need to do is once he's done his final prep, then he would want to take a small amount of blue mousse material or any other bite material that's rigid. I found through the years, the less flexible materials work the best to capture that underside of the partial. So the doctor would place a small amount of this bite material over the prep, capturing just the prep, and then just enough material so that when the partial is fully seated, just a little bit of the material oozes out around the clasp assembly. And once that is set up, then you'll take the partial out of the mouth, cut away any of the overextensions that are covering the clasp arms and or the rest seat area, and then gently push from the occlusal down, releasing this pattern. And then take a quick look at it to make sure that the entire assembly has been captured and that it's free from any voids or tears. And then once that's completed, then take the final impression like you normally would and send us that, a bite and the opposing, and we can take it from there. And again, it really, each case is going to be different. If it's a digital case, or even if it isn't, if there's a pre-op model or a pre-op scan that shows a tooth that's mostly intact or an old crown that's mostly intact, if we can get a copy of that with any other orientation points, sending us that, we can make a matrix from that, or we can use that, scan it, and then we can design the crown so that fits within the parameters of what the patient had. That will get us in the ballpark as well. So I mean, there's these are the three main.
That was three. Yeah, that was three great ways, and you did it perfect. And the first is the partial picked up in the impression. The second is the adaptation pattern with a high durometer material, something that's rigid. And then the third is, give us a pre-op model or a pre-op scan. Yeah. Fantastic. I hope that's simple enough for everybody listening.
Yep. And as always, I'm always available. If there's any questions, you can reach out to me, with a phone call or with an email. I'd be more than happy to assist anyone in a situation where there's a partial. There's going to be even odd situation where there's going to be an attachment that we need to place where an attachment used to be. So there's many different things and different ways to approach it. But in most part, these three methods should get anybody through 95% of what happens on a daily basis.
Yeah, and the crowns with an attachment that's going to fit, intimately with a partial. I mean, right. I've always thought that it's best to have those impressions picked up with the partial in place.
Absolutely. That's actually is a must for a situation like that. We're working on a case right now that has a distal VKS side grip attachment, so 1.7 that is adapt to partial as well. So we waxed to that lingual ledge, and then we've placed the attachment in there. So it can be done. It's very difficult, but yes, absolutely. If there's an attachment, that partial must be picked up. Yep.
So your team's also responsible for reduction copings. Yes. Explain what that is, and let's explain, to the doctors listening how to use the reduction coping accurately prior to seating the restoration. Yeah.
So because the digital workflow has gotten so pronounced, we do so many Bruxer crowns every day. Not every prep is ideal. So there's situations where when it's being scanned, undercuts occur or are seen. And so what we'll do is we'll adjust that area and we'll make a reduction coping. And that's what my team does, is makes the reduction copings. So what we'll do is we'll dip the die, and then the area that's marked, we'll cut out that area and get the coping casted. And then after it's seated and cleaned up a little bit, then what we'll do is we'll sandblast it and send it. And once the doctor receives the case, before he does anything with the crown, he's going to need to place that reduction coping on that prep in the mouth. And the area that was marked there'll be an opening. And so the doctor is going to want to take a diamond and adjust that area so it fits flush with the reduction coping or the area that we've reduced. And then try the crown in. He may have to go back in and adjust slightly more, but that should really suffice. That should really get that crown to seat. But it's very important that that area that we've cut out is flush, that the prep is flush with the area that we've cut out, whether it be a cuss tip or an axial wall. Either way, it needs to be flush.
Yeah, absolutely. That's great advice. And, I've always told customers just, you anesthetize, remove the temp, clean everything off, and the reduction coping goes on first. You just take a fine finishing diamond and buzz the tooth structure down so it's nice and flat. And then you go seat your restoration.
Right.
Because, we get back, I wouldn't say a fair number of cases, but we get back some reduction coping cases that, the reduction copings either weren't used correctly. And then we pour up a new model and it's the same problem. It's the same area that's undercut. And it's like, gosh, but that's life. And, as we can always make the restorations fit the models, but whether it fits in the mouth, that's something beyond our control.
Right. We try our best to make it as easy as possible for both the doctor and especially for that patient.
Right. 100%. Well, hey, Jeff, I want to thank you so much for your time. And I know you're super busy and it's not a record week, but we're still doing quite a large number of cases this week and we're getting all caught up again. And I thank you and your team. You guys are invaluable to us. And none of the techs on the front side of the building can't do their job without you guys doing your job first. So it's really a team effort. And I thank you for everything that you do for Keating Dental Lab.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Awesome. Thanks, Jeff. Be well.
All right. You too.
Thanks.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Dental Up podcast, your daily source for insights from dentists and leaders in the industry. This episode is sponsored by Keating Dental Lab, here to add value to your dental practice. With high-quality restorations, friendly, reliable service, the best products and prices, come experience the Keating difference. Visit KeatingDentalLab.com for details.